Greetings. This is the one you've known as Jesus the Christ. The most important message I have for you, which was also my message 2,000 years ago, although it was not understood then, is that I am no different than you. The Christ that I am, you are too. You have the potential to be a Christ. I am not the one and only Son of God. Each of you is a son or daughter of God, equal to me. The only difference between us is that I've realized my God nature more than you've realized yours. But the same God nature is in both of us and everyone who has ever been alive. The potential to be a conduit and expression of God in human form is what I'm referring to when I use the term Christ consciousness. It refers to the consciousness of Christ, the consciousness I represented as Jesus Christ, which is alive within each of you, although dormant in many. When we talk about awakening, we're talking about awakening the Christ within, awakening your divine, Christ-like nature, which has never actually been asleep, but only in the background, while the false self or ego has been allowed to dominate. What has allowed this, of course, could only be the divine self, as it plays hide-and-seek with itself in this human life. Christ is not a particular individual, but a state of consciousness, the enlightened state. A Christed one or anointed one, as is often how Christ is defined, is an enlightened human being. They called me Jesus Christ because I was enlightened, but many more before and after me have also been enlightened, as it is every soul's destiny to become enlightened. There is nothing special about the enlightened state. This may seem like blasphemy, since enlightenment is something every spiritually oriented person strives desperately for. To say that Christ is within you is to speak the greatest truth, and a simple one. The enlightened state of consciousness is already here in each and every one of you. It just hasn't been fully actualized. This actualization has its own wise timing, and you are not in control of that timing, except that you can resist this actualization and therefore slow it down. But a certain readiness must be arrived at on the part of the soul before the awakening process is set in motion, and you are not in control of that. The good news is that if you are aware of the phenomenon of awakening and you have a desire to awaken, there's a very good chance that awakening is not far off. The seed of longing to awaken eventually bears fruit in this lifetime or the next, and anything that you do to support that matters and speeds your evolution along. So please don't assume that awakening is for everyone else but you, especially when awakening is far more possible today than ever before. That's an assumption that won't serve you well. Assume that you can awaken, for indeed you will. And importantly, you can awaken right now in this moment by simply being fully here in your body and senses instead of lost in thought. As I said, the enlightened state is not special because it's right here. Enlightenment is the full experience of here and now, without referral to your thoughts or feelings about it. When you experience this, you discover how very ordinary it is to just be here without all the thoughts and ideas your mind brings into life. You know this state because you were in a similar state as a child, before you had words for things, and before your sense of self had developed. You also experience it, if only briefly, several times a day. You already know Christ consciousness. It's also called presence. If you imagine that Christ consciousness is something extraordinary and mystical, you'll miss it. It's not a state that comes and goes, like a spiritual experience or an altered state of consciousness. It is your natural state, the underlying hum of your existence, where love, peace, and wisdom flow from. In your best moments, you know what Christ consciousness is. You just don't know how to function in the world as that, but that's what becoming an enlightened human being is all about. It's about embodying Christ consciousness, as I did, although even I did that imperfectly, since perfection is not possible while human. You are meant to embody Christ consciousness, as I did, which means living as love and peace in your interactions with the world. This doesn't mean that you never have a human emotion, but that you don't let these emotions dominate or determine your actions in the world. Emotions may arise and will undoubtedly arise at times, even when you've reached or nearly reached enlightenment, but you will rarely act them out, and certainly not for long, before you return to Christ consciousness, to abiding in peace and love. Christ consciousness is known by love, peace, compassion, acceptance, wisdom, discernment, clarity, integrity, strength, courage, faith, trust, kindness, inclusiveness, and goodness. All of these are signs of Christ consciousness, and the absence of these qualities is a sign of not being in Christ consciousness, which can only mean that you're in egoic consciousness. Christ consciousness is attainable for anyone, even if only for a second or a few moments. The nearly enlightened or Christed person, however, is someone who abides in that state for much, if not most, of the time. Christ consciousness is cultivated by behaving as a Christed human, which is always a choice. Anyone can choose to be loving and kind instead of unkind or indifferent to another. The more you choose to behave as a Christed human, the more the state of Christ consciousness opens up to you and becomes the state from which you live. Behaving as a Christed human being is the bridge to becoming a Christed human being. Religious traditions have served people well by encouraging them to behave in such ways. If you think you can become enlightened without behaving enlightened first, you've mistaken what enlightenment is. A person can have an enlightenment experience, but that doesn't make that person enlightened. To know oneness through an experience is one thing. To embody that realization and be done with one's karma, which is what enlightenment is quite another. If someone's behavior doesn't reflect that realization, then that person isn't enlightened, no matter how enlightened that person may feel or believe himself or herself to be. You are not in your last earthly lifetime, you are not fully enlightened, until this realization is embodied, which can take several lifetimes. Please don't let this talk of many lifetimes discourage you. That's what the ego would do with it, and you mustn't fall prey to that. Awakening which can happen in this lifetime is the most momentous experience of all in the soul's journey. What happens after that is joyous and felt to be a gift, all grace. Awakening is the end of suffering, so what is the hurry to leave earth behind? After awakening, you relish life and relish serving life, while you continue to be refined spiritually. While you can't do anything to make awakening happen, you can be awake in this moment or in any other moment by choosing to align with the qualities of your divine nature, your Christ nature. When you pay close attention to the thoughts in your head, you see that they don't have the qualities of your divine nature behind them. Those thoughts are driven by fear, a sense of lack, and the need to be superior to others, not love and peace. Your natural state is one of love and peace, and those are available by being very simple, by letting go of thoughts, especially fears, worries, and judgments, and just being here in this moment, stripped of all sense of yourself. In this simple moment, what is all there is, with no one experiencing what is, just simple experiencing of the moment, without any self-referencing, without referring back to a sense of I and how I feel about the moment. What you lose when you lose your sense of I is your evaluation of life. When I suggest that you simply be in the moment, I mean be here without your evaluations and desires for the moment to be other than the way it is. The I is always discontent, always pushing for things to be different, always running away from the present moment into the past and future. When you stop doing that and stay in your present moment experience, you land in Christ consciousness, where there is nothing but love and peace. Another way to think of Christ consciousness is as your inherent goodness. The reason I'm so deeply loved by so many is that I represent the love that people so honor and crave. Why do they honor and crave love? Because it's built into them to honor and crave love. Love is your homing device. The problem with worshiping the love that is in me is that you may overlook the love that is in you. This love, this goodness that you see in me, is the same goodness that is in each of you. Notice the goodness in you. Look for it. Notice how good you are or how good you wish to be. Love this goodness and express it in the world as much as possible and as best you can, and you will become a light in the world. This is your destiny, to become a light. Please feel free to call upon us to help you recognize and align with your innate goodness, and it will be done. Thank you for being here. I am with you always.